Start-up for Aero Pelican's latest appearance at Newcastle Airport. It's the second time in 18 months the Belmont-based airline has used Williamtown. The withdrawal of Mac Air from the Newcastle-Sydney run prompted the company's return.
We received a phone call about 10 days ago telling us that Mac Air were departing the scene, and we saw that as a bit of an opportunity to have a look at the operation.
Aero Pelican will operate 24 flights per week for the next 3 months when public interest and support for the trial will be examined. The return to Williamtown isn't the first step towards Aero Pelican relocating to Newcastle Airport. General Manager Andrew Burkett says recent speculation about the future for the airline's home of 32 years has hurt business.
The simple fact is that the owner has an issue with council over the rezoning of the land, and it's purely about protecting his asset. It has nothing to do with the airline.
While it has taken time to rebuild passenger numbers after the Ansett collapse and subsequent sale of Aero Pelican, the Lake Macquarie airline remains focused on being a regional carrier.
But we've forged a good relationship with Qantas, and we also have put in place several arrangements with international carriers to through-check bags, which is we're getting back to where we were a couple of years ago.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
If there was a Rising Star Award in Australian athletics, then Joshua Ross would surely have won that as well. He'll settle for the national 100-metre crown he claimed on Saturday evening, though, at his first attempt, in just a whisker outside the Olympic qualifying time of 10.21 seconds. That's what he now hopes to beat at remaining domestic meets or overseas, if need be, before the final Olympic team is announced mid-year. While overshadowed by Louise Savage at the weekend, Eliza Stankovic was awarded the best performance of the season for the 5,000-metre event. Karen DeMarco took silver in the hammer throw in an effort only a fraction short of Olympic qualifying standard, while Jackie Munro did likewise when she won the 100-metre hurdles. To the horse-powered track, and Newcastle trainer David Atkin is to take star sprinter Impaler to Melbourne tomorrow after nominating him for the rich Group 1 Newmarket down the famous Flemington Strait. He nominated today after the gelding's powerful performance on Saturday at Randwick, where he won the Group 2 Hobartville Stakes. It was his 6th win from 8 starts, all with Newcastle jockey Dale Spriggs on board. But in Melbourne, Atkins has booked Damien Oliver for the $1 million ride. One last walk around before tonight's long journey to Melbourne, where Impaler's legs really will be tested at Flemington. While his impressive runner may be a little jittery ahead of his biggest race date yet, trainer David Atkins is taking things all in his stride.
Yeah, I don't get excited about much. Pretty quiet.
Don't let Atkins' demeanour fool you. He'd love to win the $1 million event, which would be his first Group 1 success. He had plenty to do with Moss Rocket's career, the prodigious runner placing 3rd in the Newmarket 9 years ago and was housed at the same Broadmeadows stable as Impaler.
He's the best horse that's been here, Moss Rocket. This bloke's very close to him. He's only a 3-year-old, so you know he can only get better as he gets older and stronger. So better things to come, I hope.
Nominations for the new market include some class runners, but it's the Tim Martin-trained Exceed and Excel that Atkins is keen to see again, after Impaler finished third to him last month.
He beat him 3.5 the other day, but my bloke wasn't overly fussed on the inside track at Randwick, so on a better surface we can get closer.
He'll have every chance with Flemington favourite jockey Damien Oliver aboard at the expense of local hoop Dale Spriggs.
No, Damien's, he's the best in the business as far as I'm concerned. It's unlucky for Dale, but they're the hard decisions you've got to make.
Yeah, that's right. Walk in for us.
So here's the container, ready to go.
Just 4 meetings short of completing their extended term, and it appears this Newcastle council wants to go out arguing the toss. The issue arousing passion is not a council decision, rather it's their opinion on the 5-building Lee Wharf development for honeysuckle. A fortnight ago, they decided to ask the state government to refuse the project and hold a commission of inquiry. However, last night the Lord Mayoral casting vote overturned that position, but asked for 8 conditions to be imposed.
But in essence, the council has made a decision that this development ought to go ahead in its view. Now, the council's not the consent authority, the minister is.
The 2.5 hours spent on Lee Wharf delayed council's consideration of a new $14 million building to replace Hunter Water's King Street headquarters.
The time that was spent on the Lee Wharf development, I think, was more than what was necessary. And there were some councillors, unfortunately, being prepared to play a political game because there's an election in a few weeks.
And by this afternoon, some of those councillors had decided they want to continue this debate.
3 councillors have taken it on themselves to put in a rescission motion. That means the matter will be debated again next Tuesday night.
Gary Blair, NBN News. The Hunter shopping village was once part of the Newcastle shopping experience. While many of the businesses and most of the shoppers have gone, Newcastle firm JML Group has spent almost $5 million to buy the site, ready to capitalise on its size.
We'd been looking at it for a long time, probably the last 6 months, and at 3,500 square metres, it's the last of the really big West End development sites, and we've got some very special plans for it.
And test drilling is already underway for those special plans, which will include a significant retail development as part of a $21 million apartment complex. The shopping village adds to JML's growing involvement in the West End, with construction now underway on 38 apartments opposite Worth Place, and site preparation started near Wickham Railway Station for a 34-unit project.
The West End, yes, it has had a checkered career, but its renaissance is here and its time has come.
JML has now completed 2 projects in Newcastle West, with the latest, the Cove Apartments, sold off the plan and built within 3 years. Its momentum David Chapman wants to see continue.
Newcastle is a city that still needs to foster this growth of the last few years. It cannot be nipped in the bud.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
The surf just keeps on getting better and better for Surffest. With a threatening sky looming over the contest today, early heats were delayed.
After we had the blow through at about 9 o'clock this morning, we actually stopped the contest for roughly a half an hour because there was lightning out to sea and there's a bit of a worry about the guys out there surfing.
And as the swell increased, the local boys may have gained a bit of an advantage. Merryweather's Rhys Benton and Port Stephens' Chris Michalak made it through the round of 160 this afternoon. But they weren't the top scorers today, with some of the interstate contingent making their presence felt. 15-year-old Dale Richards from Tweed Heads was one of the best with a 16.4 out of a possible 20. Despite that good showing, tournament organisers know who to keep an eye on.
Warwick Wright from South Africa, he won a WQS 4-star earlier in the year, so he can beat the big boys at any time.
With great conditions and talent like this on display, organisers were almost getting ahead of themselves.
Have a look at the world's champions of tomorrow, and that's what they are.
Elimination stages continue tomorrow and Saturday before the finals get underway on Sunday afternoon. Martin Cudahy, NBN News.
She's a former world junior champion, and today Rebecca Woods set the standard for the rest of the girls competing in the Newcastle Pro Teen with this 10-pointer.
I didn't really expect it. I knew it was sort of an average to good score, so I was just happy with the waves and having fun, so yeah, stoked.
The 19-year-old carved through the contestable 1 to 1.5 metre swell to win her heat, many commenting that her no-fear style and strength brings her into a class of her own. Merryweather surfer Brianna Brent wasn't so fortunate. Although the state women's champion gave it her all, unfortunately things didn't go her way.
It wasn't too bad, pretty inconsistent. Yeah, every time I seemed to get a good ride I hit a bump and yeah, bad luck.
Meanwhile, the 16 and under boys were battling it out at South Bar. Dean Smith from Merryweather and Dane Stone from Nelson Bay unable to match Sam Wrench from Sydney. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Organisers moved the 2004 festival to March after sweltering conditions kept many away last year. The two-day festival brings vessels of all shapes and sizes to the city in recognition of our diverse maritime history.
Newcastle Harbour is the reason that Newcastle exists, and going back and looking into that history lets us appreciate it a little more.
All the usual attractions will be there, from dancing tugs to the three-masted tall ship James Craig. The latest in coastal patrol technology will also be on display. Australian customs vessel Corio Bay will be open to the public at Tugberth 3 on Foreshore Drive. At the other end of the harbour, round 5 of the Australian F1 Powerboat Tour.
It's going to add a bit of action to the water, and it's an absolutely fantastic sport for the spectators.
The race will be held over 3 heats on Sunday, with finalists having to complete 25 laps of the gruelling course.
I must say this would have to be one of my favourite tracks in Newcastle. You've got some fast straights and also some technical corners.
Foreshore Drive will be closed to traffic between Watt Street and Nobby's Road for most of the weekend. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
It was wild and woolly in the water at Newcastle Beach today, prompting organisers of Surf Fest to cancel part of the day's program.
We can't do anything about it. We're stuck with it, so we get wet feet, everything else gets wet and cranky.
In the past 32 hours, Nelson Bay had the best rainfall with 126 millimetres. Further up the valley, falls of over 100 millimetres have prompted the Weather Bureau to issue a minor flood warning for the Williams River.
Between midnight and 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, we will have a river height at Dungog of 7.5 metres. That will mean all low-lying area of Dungog, farmlands down below Dungog, Mill Dam Falls, will have a fair bit of water over them.
The Patterson River is not expected to rise significantly, but property owners along the Williams should prepare for rising water levels.
Obviously people will need to be pulling pumps out. A lot of low-level roads will be cut. Mill Dam Falls will have probably get past minor, will exceed the minor flood warning, and that will happen probably in the area between 9 o'clock and midnight tonight. That'll probably get to around about 7 metres.
More rain is expected in the region tomorrow, but clearing by Thursday. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
If Andrew Johns felt like he had the referee on his back yesterday, son Samuel gave Dad little respite today. The captain reaching boiling point with Shane Hayne yesterday, and he wasn't the only one. The referee's patience pushed to the limit as Danny Medeiros came close to going altogether with frustration and understatement. On top of the delays with the video refereeing, penalties were the problem, 15 of them against Newcastle.
It's something I would like to see happen every week.
You might see more of George Carmont though. Plucked from the Newcastle competition, his start in the big league featuring 2 tries.
That still hasn't really sunk in. I never thought that I'd get to rub shoulders with Joey, VK and Gids, all the players that are around.
While happy with his contribution, he's the first to admit his game still has some way to go.
Yeah, I've still got a lot to improve on in that, and Haig sort of said that to me after the game, so I'm just going to try and take it each week as it comes.
The same can be said of the whole side, which struggled to find rhythm, but they remain one of 3 sides undefeated in the competition.
I mean, we got the 2 points and did some things pretty well, so we're just going to try to keep building on that.
Even on the day of the heat, debate raged about Lane Beachley's inclusion in a men's tour event.
If a guy thinks that Lane's not on his level, he shouldn't have a problem with surfing against her.
The 6-time world champion as keen as anyone to see just how Lane would go against the men. Up against current world men's champion Andy Irons, it was one of the most anticipated heats in years.
It really rattles the men, and I think it's kind of funny because, to be totally honest, it probably rattles me too.
There was definitely no hiding as the crowd swelled in numbers that'd rival a final of any other event in the country. Patience got the better of Beachley early as she struggled to find a contestable wave, while Irons pasted his first ride. It was an ominous start as he threatened to blow everyone away. But the pair who made up the 4-person final had the real say. Australian B. Durbridge nailed an 8-pointer, while a Brazilian hassled Irons out of everything to relegate the 2 world champions to 3rd and 4th and out of the competition.
It was tough, the waves were small and we got 3rd and 4th, so it didn't turn out well for us.
I guess the fact that both Andy and I lost just goes to prove that not always the best surfer wins.
But she'd love a second chance at the men.
As long as there's not too much protest from the guys, I'd definitely love to have another shot at it.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Like other events at the show, ute judging is all about presentation.
Yeah, I'm proud of it. I've got me a name, so came it to me, really.
The Upper Hunter Show started back in 1876, and it seems times are a-changing.
It's no good as saying this is how it was done and this is how we will continue to do it. If you don't change, well, you'll get lost.
Sideshow Alley has become a favourite with the younger kids, but there's something about this show which is unmistakably country. From skillful show jumping to ponies and poultry judging, there was plenty of competition and some very proud owners.
If you have a look at all the other colours, he's the only one of that colour here, and he's very attractive. And I've always thought he was a very good bird.
The hard work of local school students took pride of place in the cattle judging competition.
Our teacher has assigned us a few people to a certain cattle. This is my steer that I look after through school and in sport times.
Further north at the Gloucester show, the country charm was also overflowing. Well-groomed animals proved popular with the crowds, and with more competitors and more exhibitors, it seems the town's show is back on track. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
In September 2002, Damien Meredith was to have given evidence to Newcastle Court about a shooting incident at Marks Point. He failed to appear and hasn't been seen or heard from since. Police now want to know whether the 32-year-old from Belmont is dead or alive.
We haven't specified yet or haven't determined yet whether Mr Meredith is in fact deceased or not.
Lake Macquarie detectives have taken the unusual step of sifting through 18-month-old rubbish at the Awabba dump for clues that could provide a major breakthrough for their investigation.
We've specified an area that we're interested in, and that's just based on information and a number of inquiries that we've made that led us to a specified area.
The three-day operation involves 26 officers who are raking through the refuse in a meticulous search for evidence. Investigators now say it's urgent that anyone with information about Damien Meredith's whereabouts makes contact with police.
It certainly is, and that will obviously, if we can determine whether he's alive or deceased, will certainly determine our inquiries from here on. We're asking anyone that may have any information to either contact Lake Macquarie detectives or Crime Stoppers.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
A specialist unit of the Volunteer Rescue Association set out on the weekend, determined to solve one of Australian aviation's baffling mysteries. The Cessna 210 disappeared with 5 people on board in August 1981. Back then, the initial search was done by air. It wasn't until approximately a week later that a ground search was conducted. This particular area of the Chichester State Forest had never been searched on foot before until the weekend.
We believe it was searched only by air, and as you know, by air it's very difficult to look through the 3-layer canopy. And also the steepness of terrain might have prohibited some of the searchers originally from entering the bush.
Despite their efforts, the group failed to find any trace of the plane. However, after months of research, re-examining reports, including radar frequencies, some remain convinced the plane is still out there.
It must be within that clutter zone, and that clutter zone is in this area here.
The group plans to finish searching the 4 square kilometre zone so it can be eliminated from future searches. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
It wasn't quite the showdown organisers were hoping for, with the man tipped to knock Chris McCormick off his perch out of contention, pondering what could have been on the shore of Wallace Lake. Competing in the 18 to 24 age division, Newcastle's Shane Gibbs was among the first to surface coming out of the swim leg. But the race belonged to this man, McCormick making his move over the bike leg. It wasn't smooth sailing for all, however. A feeling shared by the already 2-time winner, finishing the race with a somewhat relaxed approach.
I'm just happy with how things went. I was very, very controlled and strong all day.
Burleigh Waters pro Jason Shortis completed the All-Aussie trifecta in the men's, while Canada's Lisa Bentley was the first woman home, bagging her 3rd title at this event.
It's very difficult to stay on task for 9 hours and push your body to its limit, and that's exactly what you have to do to win an Ironman.
And the competition bar is now effectively raised for some, with the top 75 triathletes who finished across all divisions of the event today accepting spots in October's gruelling Hawaii Ironman. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
The World War II attack on Newcastle Harbour came at a time when no one was expecting it.
At 2:15 a.m, a Japanese submarine attacked Newcastle Harbour. 121 travelled across Stockton Bight and positioned itself 9 kilometres northeast of Newcastle.
34 shells were fired from the vessel, but they did little damage to the city.
Hardly any of the shells exploded, although several did explode in the harbour, which sent up fountains of water.
Today, the Hunter Youth Drama Ensemble retold the story to around 1,000 students from 60 Newcastle schools. It was all part of the annual Newcastle Combined Schools Anzac ceremony, now in its 50th year. The event is organised by a committee of students from local schools.
We just basically worked out what the theme was going to be, organised a rough script and then ran it past Nerida, who is our government helper.
Well, they know what's going on then, but if the adults are organising all the time, well, they say, oh, well, this is just what they're telling us.
By combining Anzac traditions such as laying of wreaths and the last post with more modern elements like musical and dramatic performances, the organising committee was able to capture and maintain the audience's attention, educating them along the way.
Domestic abuse, assaults and vehicle accidents. They're among the 500,000 alcohol-related hospital episodes that occur every year in regional New South Wales. More than 10,000 of these result in death. A 5-year study looking at ways to reduce these figures will involve 10 regional communities including Inverell, Gunnedah, Narrabri, Kempsey, Grafton and Mudgee.
Police, when you go to these country towns, say that about 80% of their activity relates to alcohol consumption, inappropriate alcohol consumption.
That's in comparison to 72% in metropolitan areas. The research team will meet with representatives from each of the 10 communities to develop strategies aimed at combating alcohol-related problems. Police, health and community representatives along with council staff will play vital roles in developing those strategies, along with researchers from the University of Newcastle and the John Hunter Hospital. It's estimated that alcohol misuse costs the state $7 million per day from lost labour and productivity, crime, health costs and road accidents.
We hope that we will reduce alcohol-related harm in these 10 experimental communities. If that's the case, we'd hope that the strategies would be adopted throughout New South Wales.
Colleen West, NBN News. Last year, the coal industry lost $100 million, paying to keep bulk carriers waiting off Newcastle for up to a month until they could be loaded. Today, two of the region's federal members, Joel Fitzgibbon and Sharon Grierson, visited Port Waratah Coal Services to discuss the new quota system and also alternate solutions to the shipping queue crisis.
The coal industry is critical to the Hunter's economy, and to be successful it's got to be competitive. And any extra charge is a burden on it. We've got to make sure this industry is working very, very efficiently.
PWCS is now allowed to limit the size of shipments from each coal mine in a bid to speed up loading. The initiative will save the industry $118 million in demurrage costs this year, and the coal handler has requested the quota continues for the next 2 years. But Australia's competition watchdog says it will only last until December this year. Mr Fitzgibbon is concerned the move will disadvantage smaller coal companies. He sees problems with the region's rail network, including coal and passenger trains sharing the line at Sandgate, and steep inclines as the major problem.
I'm not happy or comfortable with the quota system. I do accept that in the very short term it may be necessary to remove some of the backlog, but it's a band-aid measure. We've got to deal with the real capacity problems we have right along that coal chain.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. The news is not good for the two local league players.
Sean Flanagan was stood down last week by his club and also from the Newcastle Rugby League, serving a week already, so he'll serve another week. And Rob Smith still has another 2 weeks to go on a 4-week suspension from the judiciary. He'll serve an additional 4 weeks to that as well.
The penalties come after the pair played games in the lower Hunter competition while suspended from the Newcastle Premiership. They were registered in both competitions, something the Newcastle League says will not be tolerated, primarily for insurance reasons. A new rule has been introduced to deter other players from similar actions.
Any cases that were found to be guilty from now on for the remainder of this season would not play rugby league under our control for the rest of the year.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
Today, the final pieces of the Hard Work exhibition were being set up after 6 months of preparation. The exhibition focuses on industries that have been critical in forming Newcastle's identity.
We're trying to demonstrate to younger folk that their perception of work and industry has changed quite considerably.
Visitors can step back into 1804 with convict images and walk through the ages to 2004. Along the way, there are various talking heads with messages of what life was like at their point in history. Although Mayor John Tate will be here tomorrow to officially open the exhibition, this replica will be here every day with his own personal voice-recorded message of his role in Newcastle's current development. The exhibition opens Friday.
It's the latest weapon in medical imaging. This new CT scanner is one of only a few in Australia, and it enables very fast and accurate patient diagnosis.
The old machines, which would take 35-40 minutes to do a scan, we're now talking 3 or 4 minutes. So yeah, from a patient's point of view, it's a lot better off for them.
The scanner, which has been installed at the new Hunter Imaging Group Centre at Gateshead, will be used by patients at the neighbouring Lake Macquarie Private Hospital and the Hunter Breast Centre. It's hoped the equipment will reduce lengthy and nervous waits for patients who may be undergoing imaging for the detection of ailments including vascular disease and spinal injuries.
For instance, a breast lump, the patient presents and we will, if it's appropriate, start off with a mammogram and then, if necessary, proceed to an ultrasound.
Further tests can then be carried out on site, giving patients results within 24 hours. The scanner and an upgraded computer system is helping to take any guesswork out of diagnosis, providing superfine image resolution that can be seen in three-dimensional form.
The anatomy that we're seeing, it's making everyone go back to the textbooks because we're seeing anatomy that formerly was not been visible.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Two-year-old Bailey has spent more days in hospital than most adults, and due to a stigma of rheumatoid arthritis being primarily an elderly problem, his diagnosis was a slow and painful process.
Numerous blood tests, bone scans, x-rays, MRIs, needle aspirates. You know, the poor little fella was put under general anaesthetic twice so they could just explore the possibility of what it could possibly be.
His parents knew something was wrong when at 13 months of age Bailey's leg swelled and he didn't want to walk. Doctors initially misdiagnosing him with growing pains.
His growth is stunted, and if we can't encourage him to keep getting up and walking and doing the weight bearing on the joints, it can also cause joint abnormality and deformity.
Like Bailey, 1 in 250 kids around the country have juvenile arthritis. That's over 40 kids in the Hunter region alone. While the majority of kids with this condition will grow out of it, there's no proven cure for the remaining sufferers. An arthritis seminar is being held at the Mayfield Ex-Services Club in Newcastle next Tuesday to raise more awareness about the condition. Linda Kincaid, NBN News.
The 2004 season launch could not have been staged in a more famous Australian setting. And for Australia's most popular female sport, it's this kind of exposure the game needs to break into the heavily male-dominated area of spectator sports. This year's season will go a long way to testing the league's popularity.
New logos, new uniforms, new player lineups, and of course a brand spanking new team.
And that brand spanking new team, the Hunter Jaegers, was represented at today's launch by their captain Reagan Jackson.
I'd never thought it would become a reality that we'd be playing out at Newcastle. So it is now, and I'm very excited.
From one captain to another, and Sydney Swift and Australian captain Liz Ellis was in Maitland today conducting a netball clinic for potential Jaegers stars. Current Hunter players Kimberly Purcell and Lara Wellham were also on hand, and it seems their team already has a supporter in the form of the Australian captain.
I'd like to see the Hunter Jaegers push for a spot in that top 4. I think it'd be great for netball in all of New South Wales if the Newcastle team and the Sydney team could be right up there.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. For most swimmers, 5 gold medals in a single championship would be cause for major celebration. But for teenager Nick Donald, the experience has not overwhelmed him.
I had 5 gold medals in the 100, 200 fly and 100, 200, 400 free. So very happy with how I went.
Not only did Nick take home a swag of medals, but he also had 4 unexpected personal best times.
To do PBs in 2 out of 3 freestyle races were just unbelievable.
And there's no time to rest for the talented teenager with a calendar full of swimming in the near future. His main focus is now on the Australian Open Short Course Championships in Brisbane in August. But like all gifted athletes, the Olympic Games are the ultimate goal. And for Nick, the Beijing Games in 2008 may fit conveniently into his future.
There may be a lot of people leaving the sport after these Olympics and then a lot more leaving after the Melbourne Commonwealth Games. So it opens up a big spot for a lot of us coming through.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
They knew they were onto a winner when their original prototype worked, but it's taken 8 years and many concept drawings later to create a design worthy of international recognition.
And logic would have dictated, stop, get on with your life, but I'm so glad that we didn't.
The former marine engineer approached his co-inventor after being inspired by his mum who'd suffered a needle stick injury while working in Maitland Hospital's emergency department.
And we had a great deal of support out of Newcastle, and without those sort of people we wouldn't be here.
The world's first retractable and disposable syringe operates the same as a conventional syringe but can only be used once. When the plunger reaches the bottom of the barrel, the needle is dragged back inside the syringe and bent, making it unusable. That means no needle sharing and no exposure to needle stick injuries for health workers. The World Health Organization estimates 1.3 million people die each year from bloodborne diseases like HIV/AIDS, contracted from the sharing and reuse of syringes. This invention has the potential to significantly reduce the amount of human fatalities. Joe Cowell and Craig Thorley have established a plant in Sydney that will soon be manufacturing 65 million syringes. Linda Kincaid, NBN News. For a youth centre which has faced continued hardship, with more than 6 break-ins since the end of last year, this feat was welcome news, and for the players, the experience of a lifetime.
We got to the opening ceremony, they were like, "Oh, welcome Australia," and it was fantastic just to hear that for us.
Being the only Australian girls team competing in New Zealand was a big achievement in itself, but more impressive was their ability to successfully compete in an open division, with their ages ranging from only 14 to 17 years.
Very tough. Team we ended up beating in the final actually beat us on the first day. So
the Hunter Region High School students teamed with 3 other school students from Sydney to form the team. Yesterday, they thanked the community for their help fundraising the trip. Coach Jan Hilton says they brought home more than just medals.
The girls made a lot of friendships over there with the Maori people, and they're still writing to some of the members of teams.
Linda Kincaid, NBN News.
Making the trip to Broadmeadow, Western bounded out of the blocks with several early opportunities. Teenager Nathan Morris on target, only to have it tipped over the bar. Less than a minute later, he pointed the way for Chad Mansley to head home and take a 1-0 lead. Mitchell Wallace wanted to level it from the restart. His Newcastle United teammate Joel Tyson sniped all half, but the Bear took things too far. It set the tone for the second half, with a number quickly joining him in the referee's black book as frustration got the better of many. Jim Kresnar's foul coming at a heavy cost, leaving Anthony Surgeon with a shot from the spot and a 2-0 lead. A little confusion as to who got the third for Western, but Nigel Boogaard claimed it as the game was well and truly gone. So too was Peter Ritchie, who got his marching orders ahead of time.
A lot of hard work by a lot of dedicated people who have a lot of passion.
Today's launch marked another step for a netball side which the captain never thought would be a reality in her playing career. A premiership-winning player in Sydney, Reagan Jackson will fulfil a dream on Friday night in not only leading a home side, but sharing court time with her sister Kimberly for the first time.
I think we've sold quite a few season tickets, and I think my family's got half of them. I just don't pay much attention. No, she's a really good captain, so and everyone looks up to her, and she's got so much experience. I mean, you can only take information from her. So.
Former Sandpiper players Lara Wellham and Danielle Harvey round out the homegrown talent in the squad. From the fanfare of the launch to the team photo shoot. But it's Friday night when the Jaegers want to capture that winning feeling in a game which they'll all make history.
That's why I'm looking forward to it. It's my birthday as well, ripe old age of 27, so we're going to have a big win and have a few bevies afterwards.
They have every right to be confident, with strong pre-season results where they pushed leading sides and scored wins over others, including the Queensland Firebirds, who they play first up. Hitting the court for training late today, you see this is where they're almost comfortable, and Friday night just can't come quick enough.
I can't believe it's only in a few days' time, so I can't wait.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Just days before the national women's soccer squad starts its Olympic camp, Salisbury and Matilda's teammate Katie Gill helped to launch a new soccer skills clinic earmarked for the state's northern public schools.
But I've been out injured for a while, so this is my first camp back in 6 months sort of thing since the World Cup last year. So
Virgin Blue today spread its wings even further with its inaugural Newcastle to Brisbane flight. And with plenty of happy customers, it seems their 737 daily service is set to take off.
This trip used to be up as much as $800 return, Newcastle to Brisbane, and here we are for $180 or $170 a return.
Well, just economically, it's half the price of what the opposition were flying up and back for.
At this stage, their only competition is Qantas, which has 4 daily flights between Newcastle and Brisbane, but in smaller Dash 8s. And if demand continues, Virgin may increase the number of flights each day.
I'm going down to Newcastle, well really Nelson's Bay, to see my daughter and grandchildren. And usually I travel to Sydney and then go up via the train, but this is wonderful.
Meanwhile, for the hundreds of Hunter business people who fly to Sydney for work, there's been a major blow, with Qantas announcing it will scrap its daily 6:40am service.
The 717 that operates the service to Sydney at the moment will be turning over to the Jetstar fleet from the 25th of May, and that aircraft will be operating to Melbourne.
Aero Pelican has indicated it may replace Qantas's early morning service, but with smaller 19-seat aircraft.
The latest craze by mindless vandals of setting whiz bins alight did more damage than usual at the weekend when the flames spread to a storeroom and electrical panel at Bar Beach. As a result, power to the lifeguard tower was cut, with the shark alarm and public address system disabled. The same facilities were also damaged at Dixon Park.
I think they're just lighting a whiz bin full of rubbish, but again, when those whiz bins are up against a telegraph pole or up against some doors to a storeroom, there's the resulting impact on the facilities that those setting the fires don't really think about when they're doing it.
Bar Beach residents say police don't seem to be able to cope with what they call the Saturday night rabble.
There was a time if you heard somebody scream over there, you'd think they were after help and you'd go and help them. Now you would not go outside your front door because it is too dangerous.
In court today, Glenn Eaglesham wept as he described the details surrounding the death of his wife Petrina, who was found with her throat cut in a car park at Taree in 2002. 33-year-old Eaglesham said he went for a walk on the afternoon of March 12 and entered the bottom level of the CCC shopping complex car park, where he noticed his mother-in-law's vehicle. He said two of the car doors were open and there was a leg hanging out of the passenger side. He moved closer and discovered it was Petrina, covered in blood. I asked her what was wrong. She didn't answer. Upon finding Petrina, Mr Eaglesham says he scooped his hands under her shoulders and pushed her up. Her head then flopped back and he saw a terrible injury and let her go. It was the worst thing I've seen in my life. I let her go and stood up and looked over the top of the car and felt like I was gonna throw up. Mr Eaglesham said he was so shocked he ran from the car park and back home before washing blood from his body and mowing his lawns. When asked by his barrister why he left her there, Mr Eaglesham answered, "I ask myself that every day." The trial continues tomorrow. Colleen West, NBN News.
Following a multi-medal winning performance at the Oceania Championships in Noumea recently, Newcastle brown belt Jessica Malone has been picked in the Australian team for the Olympics. She's training hard, but there's one stumbling block.
I've really got to get graded. That is the biggest thing that I've got to overcome now is get graded. I've got to become a black belt to represent Australia at the Olympic Games.
You're also supposed to be 18 years old before advancing from brown to black belt, but she's confident of winning a regrading at the end of this month, clearing the way for Athens. And she'll need plenty of confidence because some of the girls she'll fight in her weight division will be up to 40 kilograms heavier.